Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining me for a worm episode. I am doing something different and have been doing this different for about a week now with my regular totes and Vermibag totes where I have the fan going to circulate air around these bins. These bins don't have a lid. I just use mosquito netting. For my environment, which is South Jersey, it's very humid in the summer. I find that these bins hold a lot of moisture over the summer, so I'm letting them air out. I am noticing a difference in the consistency of the castings that are being left are drying out a little bit more than they normally would. I don't know, however, whether a lot of this is attributed to the fan or to the fact that the temperatures are coming down in my area. So I do intend to run this experiment for a couple of weeks just to see overall what happens as I head into the fall and the bins tend to get a little bit drier. The regular totes don't normally dry out as much as the Vermibag totes, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. No worm balls again really this week, and I think it has a lot to do with the cardboard and other material that is still available to the worms so they're not bunched up where I'm feeding. Keeping in mind that the castings should be drying out, I'm going to give a slightly larger feeding this week with a more wetter material of the watermelon to see how that impacts the bin in any way. And then on top of that, instead of just putting the bubble wrap over one section, I'm going to fully cover the whole bin with the bubble wrap and just see if that adds too much moisture, if it's just right. But I'm going to continue to work with the moisture content in these. Once covered, that completes the update for the first regular tote for the week. Moving on to the second tote. Now this one I purposely left half done last week just to see if it mattered at all with the fan, if it was half and half. And as you can tell, the worms are definitely on the side where the food is, and that the other side, the upper half of the bin, is much drier all the way through. So it's not just at the top layer that is a bit crunchy. All the way through this one was pretty dry, and I didn't find any worms hanging out on that side. Given that, I am going to definitely make sure that I keep the bubble wrap completely open in these bins because I don't want to dry out the side too much. And where the worms were at, that is still a pretty good consistency, closer to what I prefer. Since the castings were so dry, I'm going to thoroughly mix everything in so I don't have pockets of really, really dry material versus some wetter material. And then I'm going to also give this closer to a regular size feeding than what I've been giving them, which are smaller feedings, and then make sure that I put the bubble wrap across the whole thing. So much of worm composting is just reacting to how your bins look the week before. I know for me it's that way. It never seems like I always have a understanding of what's going on in the bin, so to speak. It's like one week is this, one week is that. So this week, this is my plan, giving them a larger feeding, make sure the bubble wrap stays, and see how much moisture is kept while this fan is circulating the air. But once the bubble wrap is on and the mosquito netting is on, the second of the Vermibag totes is also set up for another week. Moving over to the first of the Vermibag totes. This Vermibag tote is the one that had the most recent colony restart where I had to snatch some worms from the Vermibag Mini to supplement as something happened during the baiting process. Now with this one, my approach is a little bit different than the other ones because I'm building the colony. There's a good chance that when it comes to this particular bin, I am not going to harvest this one. I'm going to keep adding materials and hope that the colony grows because I just don't feel like it makes sense to harvest this when it's so small. And the worms look like they're doing well in here. They're definitely breaking down the material. The feedings are much smaller than the other bins that I'm doing right now because again, the colony is much smaller than the other ones. So with this bin, my focus is on not feeding the bin too much. I find in my bins, if I put too much food in, then I end up with potworms and beetles. So with this one, instead of concentrating on what's the moisture content, I'm more so making sure what I feed the bin gets consumed from week to week and doesn't just sit in the bin. Not that there's anything wrong with the food just sitting in the bin, but I wouldn't just feed it for the next week if that was the case. But again, for me, it's a pest issue. I don't particularly like seeing the potworms. I don't like seeing the beetles because they can easily go from just a couple to overrunning your bin. So I try to focus on, just finding that sweet spot. But for this one, again, it's going to get a smaller feeding than any of the other ones because the colony size is smaller. And then I am going to cover this one up as well with the bubble wrap, because with the Vermibag totes, leaving any of the bubble wrap off, it gets too dry, and I don't want to, again, jeopardize any of the worms. So this one gets fully covered and it'll get zipped up, and this one is set up for the next week. I think I might be adding some cardboard to this one soon though. Now the second of my Vermibag totes that I have is one that has been doing pretty well. It was restarted shortly after the regular totes were restarted, and this one I have quite a bit of cardboard still left in this one. And as I said, the environment between the regular totes and the Vermibag totes is completely different for the most part. But right now, with the humidity that we have had, it's running wetter than usual as well too. Usually the edges of the Vermibag totes have a little bit of dryness to them, which I'm not experiencing now. So for this bin, I am focusing on moisture content and the terms of not having too much moisture in this one as well. I do know that I have an abundance of fruit right now in my garden. All the fruit, summer fruit has ripened, so most of the things that I'm feeding it will have a higher moisture content, and I know that factors in as well as the humidity, but I'm doing things that I can do to try to bring that down. I think as well, for me with this one, I might add a little bit of cardboard, but seeing as how there was a lot of larger cardboard materials left, I may not. But this one will get its bubble wrap and then set up as well for the next upcoming week. For the Vermibag Mini, this is my only flow through system. And as I seem to say a lot, I do enjoy pushing the boundaries of the Vermibag Mini in terms of how much food it can handle, how much moisture it can handle before I have anything coming out of the bottom. And as big of a feeding as I gave this, the bin at the bottom of my Vermibag Mini did not have any liquid in there. So what that means for me for harvest, we'll see. I'm wondering if all the moisture is being collected in the finished castings at the bottom. But up at the top here, this is the best that the castings have looked for me in quite some time. I didn't have too many crunchy edges to deal with for this. I can't really give credit to the bubble wrap, as every time I went to check on the bubble wrap after I added it to the Vermibag Mini, the bubble wrap actually had fallen off. So I'm going to try adding the bubble wrap again to the outside of the Vermibag tote with some duct tape in hopes that it will stay on for a full week so I can see if that does anything. I don't want to continue to just feed this a lot. As I said previously, if I add too much food, then I run into the trouble of the potworms and the beetles, especially in the flow-through system. So I'm gonna dig down a little bit and give a good size feeding to this bin for this week. I'm not going to add any cardboard to it this week. I'm just going to cover it with material, and once I give it the larger pieces, I'm just going to cover that up and sprinkle the grit over it. Also give it its bubble wrap, and then this one is set up for the upcoming week. So here I go again, trying to attach the bubble wrap to the side of the Vermibag Mini. I am not having success with the bubble wrap staying. I don't check on my worm bins every day. I pretty much feed them and stay away from them for 5 to 6 days. So I don't know how many days have passed by the time I realize that the bubble wrap has dropped off of there. But this is my best attempt at trying to get it to stay. If anybody has any suggestions, I will gladly take them on trying to get it to stay, because I really want to see if this does help with the dried up edges that I deal with the Vermibag Mini. And I know the Vermibag Mini is designed for airflow. It's designed for evaporation. But the way that the edges feel on the bag sometime, I'm just worried that I am losing worms on the side because it is so dry. So after my attempt, this is what it looks like. If I need to add more tape, I'm going to try that next time. But this is what I'm going with for the Vermibag Mini setup. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. That's the update, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed the content. Please like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.